Welcome to our deep dive. We're going to be looking at character development. And you know what's really interesting? It's the fact that these characters from centuries ago can still feel so relevant to us today.
Right. I mean, it's kind of mind-blowing.
So for this deep dive, we've got some really interesting source material on Edmond Dantes.
Oh, yeah.
From The Count of Monte Cristo and Achilles from the Iliad.
Yeah, two iconic figures, right?
Yeah.
And what I find fascinating is that the source material is pointing out how these figures are not just these protagonists, but they're profoundly human.
They're more than just heroes.
Yeah. They act as mirrors reflecting like these timeless aspects of what it means to be human.
Okay, so let's dive into this.
Let's do it.
Edmond Dantes. So he's this innocent sailor who gets completely betrayed and unjustly imprisoned, and he loses literally everything and then transforms into this.
Yeah, he transforms into this vengeful count.
Yeah, this count who's set on revenge.
Right. And what's interesting is that the source material points out that his journey is kind of a reflection of these universal human experiences that we all face.
Yeah.
Loss, betrayal, and that struggle to rebuild ourselves when everything falls apart.
I mean, it really makes you think, doesn't it? Like, who are we when everything is taken away from us?
It's a great question to ponder, right? And the source seems to dig into this psychological impact of trauma.
Yeah.
And how it can completely shape our choices.
Because, I mean, you think about it, this guy goes from, like you said, this hopeful, innocent sailor to this man consumed by this need for revenge.
Yeah, and the source material asks this question. Is he driven solely by revenge? Or is there something more there?
Yeah, is there something more complex going on?
Because is he really seeking justice?
Yeah.
Or is this some attempt to reclaim some kind of power in a world that's basically stripped him of everything?
Yeah, and it's almost like he's trying to rebuild himself, but from the ground up.
Yeah.
Using revenge as the foundation.
It makes me think about the idea of resilience, which the source mentions, and this price that we sometimes pay for it.
It's true. I mean, what do we lose in that process?
Exactly. And that phrase, the price of resilience, is so powerful.
Yeah.
Because what do we sacrifice? What parts of ourselves do we lose to come out stronger?
And Edmund's story seems to suggest that resilience can come at a great personal cost.
Like a loss of innocence.
It's even a hardening of the heart.
Hardening of the heart, for sure.
Yeah.
And it just makes you think, right, like, is resilience always a positive thing?
I mean, it's a great question.
Or can it lead us down a path that's not so good?
Okay. So we've got Edmund, who is profoundly changed by his experiences.
Right.
Then we have Achilles, who the source contrasts with Edmund in a really interesting way.
Very different.
Yeah. So tell me about that.
Well, Edmund's story is all about this transformation. Right? But Achilles is like, he starts from a place of already knowing.
Yeah.
He's a warrior.
He's self-aware.
Totally self-aware. Yeah. He knows he's going to be great, but he's also acutely aware of his own mortality. And that awareness drives everything he does.
And what I thought was interesting was the source doesn't portray that awareness as tragic or burdensome.
No. It's
like Achilles embraces it.
Absolutely.
It fuels his ambition.
Yeah, he's like, I know my time is limited. I'm going to make the most of it.
So it makes you think about, you know, what are we willing to risk everything for?
That's the question, isn't it?
What are we willing to sacrifice to achieve what we want in life?
What are our ambitions?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most interesting parts of Achilles' character.
Okay.
Unlike Edmund C., he's not looking for revenge.
Right.
Or justice.
It's glory.
He wants glory. He wants to be remembered.
He wants a legacy.
A legacy that will live on forever. It's like he's trying to cheat death.
It's powerful.
It is. But it also raises these questions about ambition. Right?
Yeah.
When does a healthy drive for achievement become an obsession?
Yeah, because it's a question we all grapple with, whether we're, you know, warriors or just everyday people trying to make our mark on the world.
Totally. And the source seems to be suggesting there's this fine line between ambition and obsession.
It's easy to cross that line.
Too easy.
So we've got these two fascinating characters, Edmund and Achilles.
Yeah.
And they're both grappling with these incredible challenges.
Yeah.
And I think we've laid some really good groundwork here for understanding their choices and how they kind of reflect back on our own human struggles.
Absolutely. I think we're just getting started.
Yeah, this is going to be good.
It is.
All right, so stay tuned for more of our deep dive.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to the deep dive.
All right, so we're back, and I'm really fascinated by this idea that these characters, like Edmund and Achilles,
right,
they're not just, you know, these figures in a book, they actually reflect back on us like mirrors showing us parts of ourselves.
They do. It's like the source is encouraging us to go beyond just the plot of the story and really ask ourselves, like, okay, what can I learn about myself from these characters?
Yeah, and let's start with Edmund, because the source material really emphasizes his struggle with forgiveness.
Yeah, it's a big theme in the book, right? I mean, this guy spends years meticulously crafting this plan for revenge.
And he achieves it, but does he find peace?
That's the question, right? And it makes me think about that quote from the Count of Monte Cristo that the source pulls out, hatred is blind rage, carries you away.
Oh, that's a good one.
It's powerful.
Because it's like Edmund gets swept up in this current of vengeance.
Yeah, and it becomes this all-defining force in his life, this thing that controls him.
And it makes you think about the cost of revenge.
For sure.
Yeah.
Does it ever really bring true satisfaction?
Or does it just create more pain, more suffering?
And for Edmund, I think it's definitely the latter.
And it's interesting because the source connects this idea of forgiveness to Achilles as well.
Okay, how so?
Well, in a less direct way.
Sorry?
Achilles isn't driven by revenge. He's all about this legacy, this quest for immortal glory.
Right, he wants to be remembered forever.
But then Patroclus is killed.
Yeah, that's a turning point for him.
And all of a sudden, all that ambition, all that striving, it just doesn't seem to matter anymore.
The source highlights his grief so well.
Yeah.
It's raw, gut-wrenching grief that he feels.
It shows us that even the strongest, most seemingly invincible figures are capable of experiencing profound loss.
And vulnerability, and that's something that I think a lot of us are afraid of.
Yeah, we try to avoid it.
Yeah, we're taught to be tough, to suck it up and not show weakness.
Push through the pain.
But Achilles shows us that bottling up those emotions, those deep human needs for connection and love, it comes at a price.
He achieves this incredible glory.
Yeah, he becomes a legend.
But he's alone.
Deeply alone.
And it makes me wonder,
Yeah.
What are we sacrificing in our own lives, in our pursuit of success? Are we pushing away the people who care about us?
It's a good question, and I think it goes back to that idea of the mirror.
Right.
Because both Edmund and Achilles are reflecting back this fundamental human truth, that we all crave connection, we all need love and belonging.
It's not a weakness.
No, it's what makes us human.
It's what gives our lives meaning.
Exactly. And the source suggests that we're not fixed. We can change.
We can learn.
Yeah, like Edmund's, we can learn to forgive even if it's incredibly hard.
And like Achilles, we can realize that vulnerability isn't something to be ashamed of.
Not at all.
It can actually be a source of strength.
It allows us to connect with others on a deeper level.
So it's like we have this power.
What do you do?
To rewrite our own narratives, to make different choices.
We can choose how we want to respond to the challenges that life throws at us.
And I think that's where literature is so powerful.
Okay, why is that?
Because it gives us a safe space to kind of explore those possibilities. We can learn from Edmund's mistakes without having to actually, go through what he went through.
Yeah, it's like a dress rehearsal for life.
Exactly.
We can practice navigating these challenging emotions without having to actually live through them.
And hopefully make better choices as a result.
I like that. I like that a lot.
So it's not just about passive entertainment.
No.
It's about actively engaging with these stories, allowing ourselves to be challenged and provoked, and hopefully growing as a result.
I think that's a great way to put it.
And it all comes back to this idea that character development isn't just something that happens in a book.
Right.
It's a lifelong process. It's something that we're all constantly engaged in.
I agree. And it's something that the source emphasizes.
Okay, how so?
Well, it's this idea that literature isn't just about finding answers.
Okay.
It's about asking the right questions.
Okay, so what kind of questions are we talking about here?
Well, think about the questions that Edmund and Achilles' stories raise. Like, what does true justice look like?
Yeah.
What is the price of resilience?
What defines a life well lived?
These are questions that have been with humanity for centuries.
Yeah.
And they're still relevant today.
So instead of trying to find like a neat little answer to these big life questions, we should be focusing on continuing to explore them.
Absolutely. It's about embracing the complexity.
Yeah.
The nuance, the fact that there might not be a single right answer.
It's about the journey.
It is. And that journey, the act of questioning and exploring, that's what shapes our character.
It's what makes us human.
Exactly. And by engaging with these stories, by letting ourselves be challenged, we become more aware of our own internal landscapes.
We start to see our own patterns.
Our blind spots.
The ways in which we might be, sabotaging ourselves or neglecting the things that truly matter.
Right, and that's where the mirror analogy becomes really powerful.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this ties together.
Good.
Like the source is saying, look closely at these characters, see what parts of yourself you recognize in them, because ultimately their stories are reflections of our own.
I love that. That's a beautiful way to put it, and I think it sets us up perfectly for the final part of our deep dive.
Okay.
Where we're going to explore some key takeaways.
Yeah.
And how we can actually apply these insights to our own lives.
We've covered so much ground in this deep dive.
We have.
It's really amazing how these characters from centuries ago, Edmund and Achilles, they can still feel so relevant.
It's true.
So human, you know?
And as we wrap up, I think it's worth revisiting this whole mirrors thing.
Yeah, that's a good point.
How these characters reflect back parts of ourselves that maybe we don't always want to see.
Right, because it's like the source is saying, hey, look closely at these guys. What do you see? What do you recognize?
Yeah, and for me with Edmund, it's his struggle with forgiveness.
Yeah, he's so set on this revenge plan.
Years in the making.
But then it's like a part of him knows it's not really giving him what he wants.
You're not bringing him peace.
Right, and it makes me think about that quote from Count of Monte Cristo.
Which one?
You know the one where it says, hatred is blind rage carries you away?
Oh, yeah. That's a powerful one.
It's like Edmund gets trapped by his own need for revenge.
It becomes his prison.
And so then it makes you ask, what does true justice actually look like?
Right, because it's just about punishment?
An eye for an eye?
Or is there room for something more?
Compassion, maybe?
Even for the people who've hurt us the most.
Man, that's a tough one.
It is, and I don't think there are any easy answers.
But that's what's so great about these deep dives.
I agree.
They make us think about things in a new way.
For sure.
Like with forgiveness, I'm starting to see it less as weakness and more as a kind of strength.
Yeah, a way to break free from the cycle of pain.
And what's fascinating is the source connects this idea of forgiveness to Achilles, too.
In a less direct way, though, right?
Right, because Achilles isn't driven by revenge at all.
No, he's all about legacy.
Glory, you know. He wants to be remembered forever.
But then Patroclus dies.
And it changes everything.
It does.
All that ambition, all that striving for greatness, it just seems to lose its meaning.
The source really captures the depth of his grief.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking.
But it's also a reminder that even the strongest people,
even heroes
are capable of feeling profound loss.
And vulnerability.
And I think a lot of us have this idea that vulnerability is bad.
Yeah, we try to hide it.
We're taught to be tough to push through the pain.
But Achilles shows us that suppressing those emotions, it comes at a price.
He achieves glory, but he's completely isolated.
And it makes you think, right? What are we sacrificing in our own lives to achieve our goals?
Are we neglecting our relationships?
Our own well-being?
It's a good question to ask ourselves.
And so we come back to this idea of the mirror.
Full circle.
Because both Edmund and Achilles, they're showing us this truth.
Which is?
That we all need connection.
We all need love.
We all need to belong.
These aren't weaknesses.
No, they're what make us human.
And what's really hopeful is that the source suggests we're not stuck.
We can change.
Like Edmund, we can learn to forgive.
It might take time.
It might be hard.
But it's possible.
And like Achilles, we can learn to embrace vulnerability.
To see it as a strength.
Not something to be ashamed of.
It's about allowing ourselves to connect with others on a deeper level.
Absolutely.
So it's like we have the power to choose.
We do.
We can rewrite our own stories.
We can decide how we want to respond to the challenges that life throws at us.
And I think that's what makes literature so powerful.
Why is that?
It gives us a safe space to practice, to explore different possibilities.
We can learn from Edmund's mistakes without having to make them ourselves.
Exactly. And we can be inspired by Achilles' moments of grace.
Without having to go through the same kind of pain.
It's like a dress rehearsal for life.
I love that analogy.
So it's not just about being entertained. It's about being challenged.
Provoked?
And ultimately growing as people.
So true.
And this whole idea of character development, it's not just something that happens in a book.
It's a lifelong process.
It's something we're all constantly working on, whether we realize it or not.
Well said. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with this thought.
Okay.
What's one small step you can take today to nurture your relationships?
To practice forgiveness.
To embrace your own vulnerability.
It doesn't have to be big.
Even the smallest step can make a difference.
And that's what this deep dive has been all about, right?
Yeah, looking at these characters.
Learning from their struggles.
And hopefully finding ways to apply those lessons to our own lives.
So to all our listeners out there, thanks for joining us on this journey.
We'll see you next time.